Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive? Today we're going to be tackling HAARP.
Oh, yeah, HAARP.
It's one of those topics that seems to attract a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be real, some pretty out there theories.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to sort through all of that today using this outline we found from another podcast about HAARP as our guide.
Interesting.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of what it actually is and what it can and can't do.
Sounds good. It's interesting how something designed to just study the atmosphere ends up at the center of so many,
Oh, yeah.
conspiracy theories.
So maybe let's start with just the very basics, right?
Yeah.
What exactly is HAARP?
Well, HAARP stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Okay.
And it was established in Alaska back in the 1990s
Okay.
to study the ionosphere.
Okay, so the ionosphere is, just so everyone's on the same page,
Right.
it's that layer of the atmosphere.
Yes, it's full of charged particles.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's up there.
Up there.
And it's how's it studying it? What is it doing to study it?
So it uses high-frequency radio waves
Okay.
to temporarily kind of excite a small section of the ionosphere.
Okay, so it's not like blasting it.
No.
Is that with radio waves?
It's like giving it a poke, like a
Right.
gentle poke to see how it reacts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and this lets scientists study how the ionosphere affects things like radio signals and communication.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a very
It's way controlled.
controlled, very specific type of
Yeah.
little,
Targeted.
targeted.
Yeah, and, one of the main goals is to understand how solar storms impact GPS and communications systems and things like that.
Oh, okay, so it's like,
Kind of practical, yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like you want to understand how these natural phenomena are going to screw up all of our stuff.
Right, exactly.
But I guess it's also easy to see how this idea of powerful technology messing with the upper atmosphere might lead to some pretty creative interpretations.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where the conspiracy theories come in.
Okay, well, let's talk about those. What are some of the big ones, the main ones that you see?
Well, the biggest one is that HAARP isn't just studying the ionosphere. They think it's controlling the weather.
Really?
Yeah, they think by exciting the atmosphere, it could trigger a chain reaction, like throwing a pebble in a pond,
Yeah.
creating ripples that could affect weather patterns on a larger scale.
So the idea is that, the ripples from this little poke turn into, a hurricane.
Yeah, potentially.
That's wild. I mean, is there any evidence for that?
Well, that's the thing. The science really doesn't back it up.
Okay.
Scientists have repeatedly denied that HAARP has the power to control weather.
So they're like, chill out, everyone. We're not creating hurricanes.
Yeah, pretty much. They argue that HAARP's effects are way too localized and limited to have any major impact on the weather. Imagine trying to create a hurricane in Florida by tweaking something over Alaska.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't really make sense.
Okay, so the science doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of buzz around these theories, right?
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, just the idea of controlling the weather is just fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It kind of taps into our desire to, understand and maybe even master nature.
Right, yeah.
And then there's the secrecy, that often comes with government projects, which can feed that speculation.
Totally. If it's harmless, why all the secrecy?
Right.
Does that lead people to sort of connect it to any weather event that they don't understand?
It's possible. I mean, even if science can't explain every single weather event, that doesn't mean it's a secret government project.
Right, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes a weird storm is just a weird storm. So, okay, if HAARP isn't this weather control machine, are there, real-world examples of attempts to manipulate the weather?
Actually, yeah, there are. Operation Popeye during the Vietnam War is a pretty well-documented example.
What was that?
The U.S. actually tried to extend the monsoon season to mess with enemy supply lines.
Wow, so they were really trying to weaponize weather.
Yeah, they were.
But how does something like that compare to HAARP? Are we even talking about the same kind of thing?
That's a really good question. It really highlights how important it is to understand the scale and context of these different technologies.
All right, well, let's dig into that.
Okay, so Operation Popeye, that involved cloud seeding.
Cloud seeding.
Yeah, it's a technique that's been around for, a while.
Okay.
It's basically you introduce particles into clouds to try and increase rainfall.
So you're making it rain.
Well, they try to, yeah. It's been used in some places to fight drought.
Sure.
But yeah, it raises all sorts of questions about who gets to control the rain.
Yeah, that's kind of
It's a big one.
a big question. even if we could control the weather perfectly,
Yeah.
who gets to decide when and where it rains
Exactly.
or doesn't rain?
Right.
I mean, the potential for conflict there is just enormous.
It is, yeah, and that's part of what makes weather warfare such a complicated topic. You know,
Yeah.
it touches on national security, the environment, all these things.
Yeah, it's almost like a sci-fi movie, you know?
It is, kind of.
But the fact that these technologies exist
Yeah.
makes it feel all the more real,
Yeah.
you know?
It does, and I think it's important to remember that we can't just dismiss these concerns as, like, pure conspiracy theories.
Right.
We need to be having these conversations, you know, about the potential consequences.
So how do we sort through all of that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do we separate the real concerns from all the speculation?
It's all about critical thinking, you know? It's like
Mm.
being a detective. Don't
Yeah.
just accept the easy answer. Follow the evidence, even if it leads to something unexpected.
I like that, like a detective, yeah.
That's what makes all this so interesting.
So we need to be, like, discerning about the information we're taking in.
Yes.
Especially now that there's just so much information out there.
Absolutely.
Question everything, look for credible sources, all that good stuff.
Yeah, be willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Right, exactly. And even with, you know, the best intentions, these scientific advancements can still have consequences
Oh, definitely.
that we don't expect,
You
right?
can think about those too.
Okay, so be critical thinkers,
Yeah.
be those detectives of information.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the stuff that we just don't know about, right?
Right.
What if there are these top secret projects going on
Yeah.
that are way more advanced than HAARP and completely hidden from us?
It's definitely possible. I mean, governments and militaries are always researching new technologies,
Right.
and some of that might stay classified for a long time.
So how do we even begin to address those unknowns?
Well, it's true. There will always be things we don't know, especially with this kind of classified stuff.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we're powerless.
Okay.
We can push for more transparency from governments, support good investigative journalism that looks into these issues, and just, you know, have those conversations with each other.
So basically, stay informed, stay curious,
Mm-hmm.
and keep asking questions.
Yes.
And don't forget about collective action.
Right. Exactly.
You
When
know.
people get together and demand answers, things can actually change.
Okay, so after this deep dive into
Yeah.
HAARP and these theories and the possibility of weather warfare, it seems like we have more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's how it often goes with these complex topics.
Yeah, true. But I gotta admit, I'm still wondering, is there more to this? Is HAARP really just a research program? Or is there something else going on?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we may never get definitive proof, but I think what matters is that we're trying to find those answers, right?
Right.
Looking at the evidence, considering different viewpoints, coming to our own conclusions.
It's not about being right or wrong.
Exactly.
It's about that process.
Yeah. This wasn't just about HAARP, was it? It was about how we think about information in general.
Yeah, you're right. It was more about, like, the tools for how to approach any topic that's complex and controversial.
Exactly.
Because there's just so much information out there now, it's almost overwhelming.
It is, and that's why it's so important to have those critical thinking skills. It's like a, you know, like a mental toolkit
Yeah, mental toolkit, yeah.
for navigating it all.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into HAARP and weather manipulation,
Yeah.
remember, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep asking those questions.
Keep searching.
Yeah, because the truth is out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this one. So we've heard what others say, but what about you? I mean, after going through all this research, did anything stand out to you? Anything that surprised you, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's different when you dig into the details, you know, like really look at what's out there. What do you make of all this talk about controlling the weather?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. I can see how people get drawn to those, like, big dramatic scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I keep going back to the science. And it doesn't really seem like, I don't know, like there's strong evidence that we can control the weather in the ways some people think.
That's a good point. It really shows, I think, kind of a key thing we've been talking about, right? Critical thinking. It doesn't mean you just reject everything, but it does mean looking at the evidence and really considering all sides before you decide what you think.
Yeah, it's almost like instead of going, okay, is this true or false?
Yeah.
It's more about, well, what evidence do we have? And what are the arguments against it?
Exactly. And being willing to change your mind as you learn new things, too.
Right. So maybe the point isn't so much about, like, proving HAARP right or wrong, but more about, like, how we approach any information.
I think that's a great way to put it. This wasn't only about HAARP, really. It was about becoming more, you know, how do you say, more careful, more thoughtful about how we take in information, especially when it's a topic like this, complicated, controversial.
Well, yeah, because let's be honest, there's just so much information out there.
Yeah.
And who knows what to believe sometimes.
Right, exactly. That's why those skills, critical thinking skills, are so important nowadays. It's almost like, I don't know, like a toolbox you can use.
Toolbox for your brain, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For making sense of it all.
So to wrap up this deep dive on HAARP and all this weather stuff, stay curious, but stay skeptical too.
Keep asking questions, yeah.
The truth is out there, somewhere, maybe. Thanks for joining us, everyone.